Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy. Let's talk about physical conditions that fall into this medically disputed range of territory, okay? Now, these illnesses are genuinely debilitating. And while that's the case, proving that they meet the definition of disability under a long-term disability policy or plan can be challenging. And we always want to start, quite frankly, with a disability insurance policy or plan and see what the language is for the definition of disability. And we want to understand what's the nature of proof that's required. Do they require objective proof of the diagnosis, of the restrictions and limitations, and what other objective medical criteria does this policy or plan require? And I will tell you, there are sometimes in these objective policy requirements a laundry list of studies that they want to see to prove the actual diagnosis or the severity of the restrictions and limitations. Let's start out with chronic Lyme disease. Now, it's reported by some patients to cause persistent fatigue, joint pain, and neurological symptoms long after treatment for a Lyme infection. Now, the controversy lies in the fact that most mainstream physicians do not always recognize an ongoing infection, and they don't recognize an ongoing infection as the cause of lingering symptoms. What I've seen is that they may diagnose post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, and that doesn't really have a universally accepted definition or necessarily accepted criteria for the diagnosis. And for long-term disability purposes, this distinction can be critical. Policies will typically require a medically recognized condition or injury, and without clear laboratory evidence of an ongoing infection, insurers may deny claims, arguing that you don't have a sickness under the terms of the policy. Now, to succeed, we often will rely on detailed symptom logs, physician statements describing functional limitations, and any objective testing that can support the claim, such as imaging or lab work showing not only an infection, but secondary complications from the infection. And it can be the post-infection manifestation of symptoms that will have the objective basis of the diagnosis and the restrictions and limitations. And that's where we are generally concentrating our attention. Well, how about fibromyalgia? It's characterized by widespread pain, fatigue, sleep disturbances, and cognitive challenges. It's widely recognized, but it still can remain controversial because it lacks a definitive diagnostic test. Physicians will rely on symptom patterns, 10-point examinations, and the exclusion of other conditions. Now, while filing a long-term disability claim sounds easy for fibromyalgia, what really becomes important are several things. One is there is no diagnostic test, if you will. It's a diagnosis by exclusion. And courts understand that there may not be objective testing for these types of diseases. But where courts go off is you have to demonstrate the severity of the symptoms and how those symptoms affect work. And they want to see objective evidence of the restrictions and limitations. So what do? Well, we have detailed medical documentation. We often get functional capacity evaluations. We may get CPET examinations to document the fatigue. And we want to combine that with letters and affidavits from the treating physicians, family members, and the client, documenting their day-to-day difficulties in just doing things around the house. And then we want to tie it all together with a vocational rehabilitation counselor's opinion to connect the dots. So in this particular case, it's not so much the quote unquote diagnosis that's the issue. It's documenting the extent, nature, the intensity, severity, if you will, of the restrictions and limitations. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, EHS. Now, it involves symptoms like headaches, fatigue, and dizziness, and it's attributed to electromagnetic field exposure. Scientific support for this condition is extremely limited. Most medical organizations don't recognize it. And I will tell you, for disability insurance claims, the challenge is proving that, one, you have the symptoms, and two, that those symptoms have an organic basis, And 3, that those symptoms prevent you from performing the material and substantial duties of your occupation. One of the ways that we try to address this is environmental testing, physician reports documenting symptoms, and detailed logs of symptom severity. I will tell you, however, that disability carriers or plans really don't like these claims, and in the absence of recognized diagnostic criteria, they will really try to classify this as either it is not physically disabling or that it's actually a psychological claim because benefits are limited to just 2 years. These are difficult cases to prove. And again, we're looking at objective medical testing. If there is any objective physical findings, we are looking for any kind of robust medical evidence that documents the nature of the disabling condition, its restrictions and limitations, and then connecting those symptoms, if you will, and functional limitations to an inability to do your own or any occupation. Chronic fatigue syndrome, CFSME, and this will involve severe unexplained fatigue lasting 6 months or longer, alongside with muscle pain, cognitive impairment, and sleep disturbances. This is more widely accepted. It's accepted like fibromyalgia is, and it still, though, has its own set of challenges. The disability carrier plan is again looking for objective evidence of the diagnosis and objective evidence of fatigue and cognitive limitations that prevent job performance. So in these types of cases, we're looking at the nature of the symptoms. We're looking at the physical exam findings. We're looking at the longitudinal history of symptoms. We're looking at functional capacity evaluations, CPET exams. We're looking to put the medical evidence together. And quite frankly, it is really helpful if you are seeing a CFS-ME specialist, and there are centers around the United States, several here in Florida, who are well known and well recognized. Getting treatment by a facility like this can also make a difference in how the disability carrier or plan evaluates the claim. Again, you're going to have neurocognitive testing. That can be a whipsaw, because if the disability policy or plan has a psychological, mental, nervous limitation, you have to be careful. There are 2 flavors of the mental nervous policy limitation, and the more difficult one is the policy provision that says disability benefits are limited to just 2 years if your disability is caused or contributed to by psychological issues. And disability carriers in these types of cases want to pin a lot of the inability to work on depression or anxiety. When you have the neurocognitive testing, the neuropsychologist is going to be making differential diagnosis. They'll be testing you. They'll be looking for the cognitive impairment, but they're also going to be addressing the question of depression and its impact on the test results and your restrictions and limitations. So we have to be careful in these cases, because we really don't want the depression to be quote unquote contributing to the disability. We want to tease out the impacts of the impairment in terms of fatigue on your cognition. And again, we will potentially want to pair that with a CPET exam that will document your functional exercise activity intolerance. Obviously, we want to try to tie this all together with some good, hard opinions of your physicians. Well, let's talk about disputed physical conditions and long-term disability. For all these conditions that I've mentioned, and some I haven't mentioned, I think there are really 2 key provisions in the policy that you need to be concerned about. The first is proving the existence of a medically accepted sickness or illness, again, as those terms are defined by your policy or plan. We want to demonstrate the objective basis for your disability, as that term is defined by the policy or the plan, by showing that you have symptoms that objectively and materially limit your ability to perform the material and substantial duties or the essential duties of your occupation. Now, even if the diagnosis is disputed, detailed documentation, symptom tracking, and physician support can make all the difference, because courts want to see, in these instances, an objective basis for the restrictions and limitations that impact your ability to do the material and substantial or essential duties of your occupation. It's this objective basis of the restrictions and limitations that really is key, notwithstanding whether there is a objective basis, if you will, for the diagnosis, or even testing that will establish the diagnosis. Got it? Let's take a break.